It's Monday, February 17th, 2025. A flurry of activity once again from the White House. Vivek Ramaswamy, next governor of Ohio, and the Canadian men's national team messed around, and they found out next on the AM Update.
Budget reform is not an option. It's a necessity.
The American people are entitled to transparency.
Very few people understand how sinister this agency really is, and President Trump saw that, and he stood up to it with a masterstroke.
Underway, and the gloves are off.
Did you hear about the woke gunman in Milwaukee?
Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
A federal judge in Washington on Friday handed Elon Musk's government efficiency team a win by declining a request to temporarily block it from accessing sensitive data from at least 3 federal agencies. Unions and nonprofits attempted to stop Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, from accessing records at the Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. U.S. District Judge John Bates wrote in an opinion that the government was likely correct in categorizing DOGE as an agency, thereby allowing it to detail its staff to other government departments. Now, this John Bates, we talked about him last week. He's this little pissant judge who feels like he can call balls and strikes on every little jot and tittle of the Trump administration's plans for this country. Of course, you've seen Democrats all over the place the last week saying, we didn't vote for Elon Musk. We didn't vote for this. Well, nobody voted for the people they're actually firing either. But I do know a lot of people allegedly voted for these two guys.
Budget reform is not an option. It's a necessity.
The American people are entitled to transparency.
We can't sustain a system that bleeds billions of taxpayer dollars on programs that have outlived their usefulness or exist solely because of the power of politicians, lobbyists, or interest groups.
They're entitled to be able to figure out where their dollars are going, and they're entitled to accountability to make sure that we're using the dollars for what we said it was for.
Yes, the last 2 presidents, or Democrat presidents of the United States, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, sounding like they wrote the playbook for what the Department of Government Efficiency is doing. Meanwhile, over at the IRS, it's sounding like they're going to lay off as many as 15,000 employees in the middle of tax season as the White House continues to slash spending across the government. The axed workers are all on probationary status with limited tenure in their jobs. The cuts could come as early as this week, just 1 month after the IRS began accepting tax returns. The move comes after an employee of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency arrived at the IRS's headquarters last Thursday asking about the agency's technology and how audits are done. An estimated 15,000 employees will be affected. Around the rest of Washington, D.C., check out this story from Zero Hedge. Internet search trends in the Washington, D.C. metro area have been nothing short of stunning in recent weeks, reflecting what appears to be a growing panic within the federal bureaucracy as President Trump and Elon Musk's DOGE root out corruption in non-governmental organizations and federal agencies. Earlier last week, internet search trends for criminal defense lawyer and RICO laws went viral on X, fueling speculation that Washington's political elites were in panic mode. The searches coincided with DOGE's efforts to neuter USAID's funding of NGOs that propped up a shadow government. Now, more suspicious search trends have erupted among D.C. residents as DOGE efforts went into beast mode at the end of the week. Washington, D.C. searches soared for Swiss bank, offshore bank, wire money, IBAN or international bank account number. Search terms also trended for wipe, erase, BleachBit, and other terms. Yes, wipe hard drive. That search term across the D.C. metro has gone absolutely parabolic in its trend on Google searches. Statute of limitations, lawyer, also trending on Google search. So there is obviously a palpable sense of fear and panic amongst the D.C. elite right now. Donald Trump on Truth Social quoted this from Napoleon, quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." Donald Trump is now enjoying some of his best approval ratings ever as he, from the Napolitan News Service, and that's again RMG Research, that's the old Scott Rasmussen, the OG Scott Rasmussen, he has Donald Trump with a 55% approval rating. Maybe that's why Donald Trump is going about signing executive orders like this one. This is banning all funding for schools which mandate the COVID vaccine. Did you hear that? He was just signing the executive order, very matter-of-factly. That solves that problem. The order, according to a report from Breitbart confirmed by the White House, prohibits federal funds from being used to support or subsidize an educational service agency, state educational agency, local education agency, elementary school, secondary school, or institution of higher education that requires students to have received the COVID-19 vaccination to attend in-person educational programs. It also tasks the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy and the Secretary of Education to establish guidelines for compliance and to, quote, provide a plan to end coercive COVID-19 vaccine mandates. That includes coming up with a system to block federal funding to, quote unquote, educational entities that have a coronavirus vaccine mandate in place. Donald Trump also in recent days signed an executive order for reciprocal tariffs.
On trade, I have decided for purposes of fairness that I will charge a reciprocal tariff, meaning whatever countries charge the United States of America, we will charge them. No more, no less.
Trump said he did not expect any exemptions or waivers for this plan for reciprocal tariffs, which is basically tit-for-tat tariffs. Whatever you're tariffing our goods that we're exporting to you, we're going to slap a tariff on all of your goods coming back to us. A source familiar with the plans told Fox Business that the Trump presidential memorandum orders the U.S. trade representative to investigate and counter non-reciprocal trades across all trading partners. The representative will identify trade agreements where there are significant trade deficits detrimental to the United States. Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign filed paperwork to begin his widely expected run for governor of Ohio. The venture capitalist's campaign filed its designation of treasurer form with Ohio's Secretary of State on Friday. The form is a requirement before a candidate's campaign committee makes any expenditures or receives contributions. The filing represents an official registration for Ramaswamy's gubernatorial committee. While the filing was made under the name Vivek Ramaswamy for Ohio, and online records did not note an explicit reference to a gubernatorial bid. But Ramaswamy has been heavily hinting about the Ohio governor's race, which will take place in 2026. I like this. I hate Ramaswamy's guts, really, because I think he figured out that, hey, you can just say really bombastic right-wing things and you can get a huge audience really quick. But man, that dude is a talented communicator nonetheless. And I hope that he can actually take that messaging skill and prowess, H-1B visas notwithstanding, I hope he can take that prowess and actually put it to action, because he is the odds-on favorite, I'd have to think, to become the next governor of the state of Ohio. According to the New York Times, the State Department is planning to designate over 6 cartels and criminal groups with links to Latin America as foreign terrorist organizations. 6 unnamed sources familiar with the imminent decision told the Times that in addition to the Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gangs, the Trump administration plans to designate 6 Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organization: the Cartel de Golfo, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the Coacan family, the Northeast Cartel, and the Sinaloa cartels. The planned designations are in accordance with an executive order Trump signed on his first day in office. Trump underscored that it is now the, quote, policy of the United States to ensure the total elimination of these organizations' presence in the United States and their ability to threaten the territory, safety, and security of the United States through their extraterritorial command and control structures. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum threatened to expand her lawsuit against the American gun manufacturers and vendors if the State Department went through with the designations. Sheinbaum noted specifically Mexico would introduce another allegation accusing gun makers of complicity with terrorist organizations. So I'm trying to think of any innocent reasons why Mexico's president would be shirking at the idea of designating a foreign country, designating admitted criminal organizations as terrorist organizations. There are only bad reasons for that, Miss Claudia Sheinbaum, the El Presidente El Gringo of Mexico. Why would you be pushing back against the United States, actually trying to clean up your own mess? When we come back, the U.S. and Canadian men's national teams faced off on the ice. When Canada messed around, they found out. Also, we hear from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at his swearing-in ceremony, summarizing what he wants to do at HHS. That's coming up next.
Underway, and the gloves are off. Matthew Tkachuk and Brandon Hagel.
That is ESPN's Sean McDonough on the call as multiple fights erupted in the USA versus Canada's men's national teams faced off in the Four Nations face-off. Now, the Canadians, this was on Canadian territory. This was in Canada where this match went down over the weekend. And Canadians actually in the stands booed as the U.S. national anthem was playing. They booed that. Subsequently, three fights broke out in the first 9 seconds after the Canadians booed the U.S. national anthem. The U.S. men's national team won 3-1. Since we last spoke, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been sworn in as Secretary of Health and Human Services after finally being approved by the Senate last week. He discussed what he aims to accomplish during his time at HHS.
To restore the American dream in this country. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. 60% of our population has only one dream, that they get better. President Trump has promised that he's going to restore America's strength. But we can't be a strong nation if we have a weak citizenry. If people are sick, 60% of our people are sick, 77%, as President Trump mentioned, of our children cannot qualify for military service. And we need a man on a white horse now. We need somebody who is willing to come in and has the spine and the guts and the strength to challenge orthodoxies, to stand in the way of vested interests, and to break institutions that have turned against our democracy. President Trump has shown again and again that he is that hero. And most recently, I greatly appreciate it, and I called you the day that you announced the termination of USAID. My uncle started USAID in 1961 for humanitarian purposes, to put our country on the side of the poor. It has been captured by the military-industrial complex. It has become a sinister propagator of totalitarianism and war across the globe. And very few people understand how sinister this agency really is. And President Trump saw that, and he stood up to it with a masterstroke. And we want to do the same thing with the institutions that are stealing the health of our children. We need a revolutionary figure, and you are that figure, and I'm very grateful for you for giving me this opportunity.
So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking the talk there, and HHS is a behemoth, and you need to pray for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that he's at the very least able to start some fights. I'm not sure how many, just given the behemoth of those institutions under the control of HHS. I'm not sure how many fights in just 4 years they're going to be able to win. But what matters the most right now is starting the arguments. What are we? How are we created? What are our bodies? Is utopianism even possible? No, it's not. Can we start those arguments? Can we get real science back into the halls of our nation's science institutions? That's what Robert F. Kennedy is endeavoring to do, and we need to pray for him in those endeavors.
This is Hurley, Virginia, February 15th, 2025.
It's the voice of a resident of Hurley, Virginia, videotaping just absolute devastation in her small town from floods over the weekend. More than 110 million Americans were under alerts on Sunday for flooding, mudslides, and strong winds as dangerous winter weather left tens of thousands without power throughout the South and caused multiple deaths in Kentucky. Heavy rains continued to produce serious flooding across parts of the southern United States on Sunday morning, where rapidly rising floodwaters inundated roadways and spurred some evacuations. Meanwhile, snow and sleet made for messy weather in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Throughout Saturday and into Sunday, there were numerous flash flood warnings issued across parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, and North Carolina. The impact from the flooding in his state is massive, according to Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, and there have been hundreds of water rescues and multiple fatalities. Keep all those involved in the path of this just wicked weather in your prayers. Have you heard this story? This is courtesy of independent journalist Andy No.
Did you hear about the woke gunman in Milwaukee?
Stay woke. Stay woke.
Blake, we are not naming him yet.
Near 27th and Wisconsin Wednesday, gunshots. And a closer look appears to show the barrel of a long gun. A different camera captures a man walking down Wisconsin.
An officer returned gunfire, subsequently striking the suspect.
That gunman died at the scene, but not before sources tell us his gunfire hit a different officer.
Cry your tears, wipe them later. Why does it matter if somebody's gay? Why does it matter if somebody is trans?
It's crazy how everyone on this post can judge my nephew but doesn't have a clue to what he was going through. And no, it doesn't excuse his behavior, but he was a good person. It's amazing how a white man can shot up a whole effing place and walk away in handcuffs or with a shot to the leg or arm, but my nephew had to be killed. Yet y'all on this post making effing joke about how he didn't know how to shot a effing gun, and by the way, he could have shot and killed many if he wanted to because he did served in the army.
So that is a story from independent journalist Andy No, complete with some footage of a woke, anti-white gunman in Milwaukee who just started opening fire into the air back on February 12th. I had not heard anything about this story all weekend until Andy came up with that, and then he read some comments from a relative of this black gunman. Of course, we didn't hear anything about this. A black, overtly and outspokenly anti-white woke gunman goes nuts in Milwaukee. Of course, we didn't hear anything about that. And now here's this. J.D. Vance spoke at the Munich Security Conference late last week in Germany. It's one of the best foreign policy speeches I have ever heard. It's about 20 minutes long. You should listen to the entire thing. This, in my opinion, is probably the best 3 minutes from that speech. Again, listen to this speech. J.D. Vance, I would like to stipulate something to you. Think about this while you listen to it. J.D. Vance is the anti-this prominent political figure. You heard his voice earlier in today's episode. He is the antithesis of this prominent political figure. Listen to this.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones. warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
That is J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, at the Munich Security Conference late last week in Germany, confronting to the faces of European leadership just how far they have fallen. All of these Eurotrash leaders who claim to be paragons of capital D democracy being confronted with their own draconian, really dystopian policies when it comes to free speech. And here is J.D. Vance, the American, coming along and telling them off to their faces. I asked you before who J.D. Vance is the antithesis to. J.D. Vance is the anti-Barack Obama. Whereas Barack Obama spent the first year in office, and really the entirety of his time in office, apologizing for the United States over and over and over again. J.D. Vance comes in, and his very first few weeks in office as vice president, not the head of state, as the vice president, repeatedly telling European leaders and really putting the entire world on notice, America is the leader. You will listen to us. You will come correct. And if you do not, as J.D. Vance said later on during his speech at the Munich Security Conference, if you do not, there's nothing we can do for you, because there's nothing you can do for yourselves. If you continue to treat each and every one of your citizens with supreme disdain and suspicion, there's nothing we can do for you, because there's nothing you can do for yourselves. J.D. Vance is the best political communicator since the great communicator, Ronald Reagan, and I do not think that's up for debate. He is better at articulating America first than Donald Trump is himself, and Donald Trump, I think, has gotten better at that as time has gone on. J.D. Vance is shaping up to be a generational talent. Whoever is writing his speeches is immensely talented as well, if it's not J.D. Vance himself. You need to listen to the entire speech, because J.D. Vance is the anti-Obama. He is the antithesis, the right side up of Obama's upside down. Man alive, it's incredible watching some of these developments play out that I just really never thought about 4 months ago. I never really thought we would see in our lifetimes. And here we are. We can do it. Good can happen. And J.D. Vance is just one example of that in a myriad of examples that we've seen over the last few weeks. When we come back, it's time to get trashy. And finally, let's get trashy. Air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I'm sorry, but if you know who this individual is, and you've followed her for any amount of time whatsoever, and you did not suspect that she is what she is shaping up to be, I'm sorry, you were just born yesterday. Ashley St. Clair is a very prominent so-called right-wing influencer. She's got over 1 million followers on X. Very prominent influencer on the right for going on half a decade or more now, really since the dawn of the Trump era. And several years ago, I remember she came out and said, hey, I had a baby out of wedlock, just letting you guys know, we're not married, blah, 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 blah. I actually had sympathy for her back then because I never really took it for granted that she was a Christian or like an actual dyed-in-the-wool conservative on any level. Yeah, she appropriated some right-wing aesthetic in her messaging and her lifestyle, but it was clear to me anyway. I'm not trying to prop myself up here, but it was clear to me that she never really tried to articulate that she was anything other than just an influencer online. Just happened to be right-wing. Will spew right-wing talking points for a lavish lifestyle. That was basically her thing. And years ago, when she said she had a child out of wedlock, she was just pilloried and trashed by a lot of right-wingers, conservatives, on social media for, she was being shamed for that. And, of course that is bad. You need to have, sex belongs in marriage. We all know this. But I was sympathetic for her because I didn't take her as anything other than an influencer who happened to articulate right-wing talking points. And so I actually thought it was a positive that she didn't kill her baby. I actually thought it was a positive, and it was an opportunity for people to speak words of truth and love into her life, and hopefully encourage her to follow the path of righteousness in the future. It was maybe an opportunity, and so I had some sympathy for her back then. Well, now she came out on Valentine's Day evening with a statement. For the protection and privacy of my new baby that I just had 5 months ago, I need to address this. I had Elon Musk's baby 5 months ago. Okay. First of all, that's a heck of a thing to do to protect your baby's privacy, is come out of your own volition in front of your millions of followers and make this announcement on Valentine's Day evening. Come on. She knew exactly what she was doing. This is not about Ashley Sinclair. What I want to get to, I think is far more interesting. I just want to set this up. If you were surprised by this, I'm sorry you were just born yesterday. She's just a harlot, on both sexually now, I think, and rhetorically. She doesn't believe anything. All she does, she'll just put out anything for money and a lavish lifestyle. In fact, she's the type of person. I wouldn't be surprised if she was making this up. I'm not saying she is, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was making all this up about having Elon Musk's baby 5 months ago. So she's a degenerate. Now, to Elon Musk. Assuming this allegation is true, this would be Elon Musk's 13th child, I think, with 4 or 5 different women. Elon Musk is an enigma on some level. He has spoken very openly, pushing back at the idea that the globe is overpopulated. He has spoken out on numerous occasions saying we actually need more babies. We need more people to have more children. Looking at places like Japan, looking at places like, pick any country in Western Europe. What could be coming for the United States sooner than later? A demographic winter. Those things are not something that you want to mess with. He's been very open about this. He's been very open about shirking the left. He's the one who coined the phrase the woke mind virus, and how it killed, in his words, killed his son. One of his sons who is now a dude pretending to be a lady. A dude who feels pretty. So why is it that Elon Musk, who is not a dummy, in fact, he's not a dummy, he's one of the smartest, if not the smartest men living on this planet today. Why does somebody like him, very smart, have allegedly now 13 children with 4 or 5 different women? Do you think Elon Musk is not aware of the objective data? And there's reams of it. Look at the marriage project at the University of Virginia, Brad Wilcox. There's reams of data, objective analysis, showing that the outcomes of children who have both a mom and a dad in their lives are objectively better across the board than those children who do not. Do you think Elon Musk has never heard that before? I'm sure he has. He's one of the smartest dudes in this planet. He's heard this data before. He knows that his children, his de facto fatherless children, would be better off with him in their lives than not. And yes, he has his son X with him like all the time. That's great, but all of his other children need his time and attention as well. He knows this. And yet, he allegedly keeps on siring children, or siring women, I should say, with reckless abandon. See, Elon Musk is a case study of why it's easier for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. The explanation here of why a smart man who knows that children are better off with fathers in their lives than those who are not. The explanation is quite simple. Elon Musk doesn't care, because he likes his sin more than he likes that very important and crucial fact that men need to be fathers to all of their children. He likes his sin. And his vast wealth has afforded him the ability to basically subsidize his sin. He could have as many children as he wanted to, pay child support for thousands of women, and he would nary feel a dent in his wallet. We're really lucky to have somebody with his resources, his wealth, his platform, at the very least tangentially on the side of the good, the true, and the beautiful. But at the end of the day, you're not going to go to Elon Musk for matters of faith, for matters of theology, for matters of morality. Very limited in those categories because he likes his sin more than he likes the truth, ultimately. And he's telling you that here. So I'm not saying, hey, just discount, throw him on the ash heap in your mind. No. We're still going to cover all of the good things that he does with DOGE. All of the amazing technological advances that he has pioneered, celebrate those. But he's accomplishing those in spite of his sin. In spite of his sin. God has allowed him to do some extraordinary things in spite of his sin. He has the luxury of subsidizing that sin. And I think it's a case study of why it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He likes his sin too much, and he has too much money. He has too much money to be uncomfortable. That's going to do it for Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.